Hi, this is Randy Randall of No Age and host of the podcast Hyphenate with Randy Randall. I want to welcome our newest sponsor of the show, DistroKid. DistroKid helps musicians get their music on all the major streaming platforms, and artists keep 100% of their royalties. Hyphenate listeners get 30% off at distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate. Again, that's distrokid.com/VIP/HYPHENATE. Go get your music streaming everywhere now. Hello, Aaron Farley. How are you doing? Thanks so much for jumping on.
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Today we are talking about the mega band Wah Together. What did you think of the episode?
I thought it was amazing. I had never heard of the band. As of all, I feel like that's the common thread in all of these. I didn't know anything about the person at all. So these are all new to me, which is great. But it was cool because even though, like when I had done the artwork and you sent me the photos and stuff, I never really looked up the actual members to see who they were. And then, so it was cool to listen to it and then hear that, Vito was in The Rapture and Steve is in Longwave and Phil was in LCD and 1,000 other like years and years of other things.
Yeah.
And then Jaiko is just like, seems like the most interesting person in the world.
Exactly, right? He's been everywhere, like a Ziegfeld or somebody's been everywhere. I know they're, as a hyphenate, I feel like their band is sort of the hyphenate, or if you've been in a lot of bands, then you sort of become ex-members of this, hyphenate that, that you can, your introduction, like, oh yeah, this is my friend, he's been in this band, it's a form of hyphenation.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I feel like I love hearing stories of musicians and artists growing and getting older and still finding ways to kind of do these weird, difficult, creative, or live these weird, difficult, creative lives and somehow kind of keep making money and pushing forward. I think that's the cool thing about their stories, because they were all in these bands from pretty young age. It seemed like everybody was pretty young when they first, who was it? Was it Steve or Vito that was touring when they were like a senior in high school and they were getting record label?
That was Steve. Yeah. It was nuts.
Yeah. And so starting that early and then kind of, getting in with the whole Strokes camp and going on tour and that era of like when everything was blowing up in New York and all the music was becoming huge, to then hear his story of, starting a little studio and them all kind of going, oh, what's my next chapter? Or I don't even know if necessarily thinking what's my next chapter, but just going, I don't really want to, tour is a tough way to make money, and maybe I should start a little studio. And then they all have studios.
I love
which
the
is
idea
amazing.
The band where everybody has their own little studio where they can all record their parts in a professional thing and just trade tracks around. Yeah, the record's really good too. It's like a really fun band. It's something, you kind of look at ex-members of all these bands on paper, like, okay, well, what is it going to be? And if and hearing the record, I got a chance to see him live when I was in New York last, and yeah, it's a fun party band. It sounds like all the kind of the funnest elements of all those other bands, and really kind of fits together organically.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that that's the exact thing that I was going to say about the record when I listened to it, is it just sounds like a fun band to be in. It sounds like they're all like, they all have their other thing going on. And so this is their way to, I think they even talked about it, that like, well, we miss playing in bands because we're, a couple of the guys are recording commercial, like doing a lot of commercial music or soundtrack stuff, or stuff that might not be to their artistic inclination,
But it pays
or
the
their
bills.
artistic,
Yeah.
yeah, their artistic inclinations is not the first thing on the list. And so it does open up, and I think that that's an interesting thing, like even with art, you know, people that have enough money to survive doing one thing and then can actually do their craft or their art in a way that there aren't really any rules, because they don't have to figure out like, well, how are we going to make money from this? Like, I need to make this a little bit more heavy, or I need to make it because that's what's going right now, or that's what the promoters want, or whatever, you know. And you get to kind of just have a band that everybody has enough of a history of music that your band is instantly kind of trusted to just be a good band. Like, of course, these guys aren't going to put out a shitty band or shitty songs. You know, there's too much history there to like for anybody to let anything come through that isn't just like, doesn't just sound good. There's like, I'm sure you go to the show and you're like, yeah, it's going to be a great show. Of course it is. Look who's in the band.
Yeah, the pedigree sort of speaks for itself. I know it's a funny one. You think about these like super groups. Like, I know it's you know, I feel like it was happening in like the 70s and 80s. I'm trying to think of who the other, you know, the Traveling Wilburys, I guess, is, you know, sort of one of the more high profile sort of things. But I don't even know if that's a super group as much as, you know, a bunch of kind of individual sort of songwriters all working on one big project. What's the other one? Like Power Station? It was like Duran Duran and Robert, who's like a Simply Irresistible. What was that guy's name?
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Robert Palmer.
Robert Palmer. There we go. Yeah. The thing is like Robert Palmer and
was
Duran
that Power
Duran.
Station? Really? Yeah. That's what Power Station was?
Some like no it hot, but some sweat when the heat is on.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
So there's lots of examples, I guess. You know, I'm trying to think. I'm sure there's a million more that I can't think of. If you at home are yelling at your phone, please email us at hyphenatehalftime@gmail.com and tell us, you know, a list of supergroups.
I can't believe they don't know blah blah blah. Well, I was trying to listen, so I've been listening to this. I mean, speaking of podcasts, it's like the history of rock music podcast in 500 songs. It's this this rock or music writer who is doing this, and he's on like song number 143 or whatever. But it actually made me think a lot when I was listening to this episode, because so much of it is about like the producer of this person knew the writer of this song, and they talked to the manager of Mick Jagger's manager, and he ended up giving the song to this person instead, and then they changed the bass, you know, and it's like super, but you realize like after listening to so many of them that so many of these businesses, I guess the music business part, it's so dependent on, like, you just see the output of the band at the end of the line of like, oh, they must have just made these songs in a place. But then once you get into it, and I think it was like Phil, once he kind of went through his quick story, which I feel like you could probably do 10 podcasts just with him.
I think he's got a book in him. He's definitely, I think I love all of them. I mean, they're all very interesting people, but I feel like maybe it's just my Anglophile sort of nature. You hear his voice like, well, start it off over here. You're like, oh no, wait a second.
And then I ended up in Glasgow and
working on a Steven Spielberg movie soundtrack.
Oh my God. Yeah. And just because we said like, no, like we wouldn't give a song to the movie. We wouldn't license a song to the movie, but we'll do the whole soundtrack, or we'll do not the soundtrack, but the
score.
What's it called? The score.
Yeah.
And I thought the kind of, I love a good story that's told in kind of a flippant nature, when the person knows that the thing's like, you're going to go like, wait. What did you say? Who? Then you did what? How did you end up there? Oh, I don't know. I was just on a bus, and I was talking to a guy, and then I was doing a Primal Scream record, or whatever, however, it just sounded so like, well, I was just
Yeah.
there, so I
Yeah.
decided.
I feel like he's told some of these stories quite a few times. Oh, before we get too
Oh
far,
yeah.
I looked up supergroups. Okay, are you ready?
Oh, okay, good.
All right,
Good, good.
here's some good ones. Traveling Wilburys, already mentioned.
Yeah.
Audio Slave, Chris
Oh
Cornell.
yeah, of course.
I mean that's kind of the
Yeah.
thing. You swap out singers.
Yeah.
We got Phantomus, which is like the Dale and Buzz join Mr. Bungle.
Right.
And
Right.
who else? And then we have Velvet Revolver, again another kind of like singer swap.
Okay. Yeah.
Temple of the Dog, which I don't know necessarily if it was meant to be a supergroup or if those people were all just in this band
That,
before they were famous.
yeah. That's like a super group before the other groups were even big.
The
And then they went back.
prequel,
Yeah.
the prequel supergroup or something. Yeah.
Yeah. They just knew. They knew it was going to happen.
And then some that I don't really know. It's like, what is the Highwaymen? I guess this was like Willie Whalen, Chris Christopherson,
right.
Johnny Cash. That's sort of like the country Traveling Wilburys.
Yeah.
Cream, Blind Faith. I feel like if anything Eric Clapton was in, it just becomes a super group. You just put Eric Clapton, becomes a super group. Chicken Foot. Do you know Chicken Foot?
Chicken Foot.
Chicken Foot is Chad Smith of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Steve Vai on guitar, and Mark Anthony from Van Halen with Sammy Hagar from Sammy Hagar and Van Halen.
Wow.
So it's one of the weirder, kind of more modern.
A lot of hits from that band.
Right? Yeah. Again, oh yeah.
The weird thing is,
sorry.
I feel like the old super groups, like when you hear Traveling Wilburys, you're like, yeah, of course. And then when you hear the new ones, they don't seem. They're like, yeah, but those guys just were like, their other bands were breaking up and
they needed something,
and they just decided to like, they needed a new some cash flow.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's a whole Wikipedia thing on it too that's just like 10cc, Neil Sedaka. I always saw those 10cc records. I think the album cover artwork was always really good. I never knew who was in it.
I don't remember that.
Okay, let's see.
Well, I'm just thinking now. Journey? I wonder if Journey was a supergroup.
Well,
what were the members?
Well, they're putting Greg Rowley and Neil Schon were in Santana, and again, it's like how far down,
really?
what constitutes a supergroup. Then George Tickner was in the Fruminous Bandersnatch, which everybody knows. Ross Valerie is in Steve Miller Band, and Prairie Prince was in the Tubes. So,
I didn't know that.
It's kind of like ex members of, but it's like, if your new band is more famous than your old band, I feel like then
guys
like
that got kicked out of,
right? Yeah. I think what else do we got? Sorry, I could do this. Let's see, who's else? Some good ones. Wait. Asia. We got some King Crimson. Yes. Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Wow.
There was some in there. Yeah, I never really locked into that. Okay,
I don't know though. Is it a super group if you didn't know that the other guys were in the other bands?
Right. Well, but even they're putting stuff with like Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. You have Nick Cave from the Birthday Party, Mick Harvey also from the Birthday Party, and Crime in the City Solution. Blixa Bargeld from Neubauten and Straight Neubauten. Barry Adamson was a magazine. Hugo Race, the Requiem. I don't know that. Thomas Weidler, Die Hard. Didn't know that. Okay. So it was fun. Oh, yeah. The Power Station. Tony Thompson was in Chic. And then Josh and Andy Taylor from Duran Duran with Robert Palmer singing. Okay. I'll count that one. Let's see. Who else is good? Mike and the Mechanics. Did that? I don't know. What was theirs? Let's see.
Yeah, but what was the other band for Mike and the Mechanics? I feel like if the super group is the only group and then you're like, oh, and then there's a couple other guys. I feel like super group should be like, you
everybody's
put like a lead guitarist, a lead singer, and like John Bonham.
Everyone's kind of got to be holding their place, sort of tight, right? What else we got here?
Well,
the three tenors. Yeah, Placido Domingo, Jose Carlos, Luis John. That's what the law together could be called. The three tenors of New York dance rock.
Right. Well, and back to the Audio Slave thing. Do you think Audio Slave was actually bigger than Soundgarden and Rage Against the Machine? I bet that they sold more records.
What, really? Audio Slave?
I bet.
Wow.
We could
I
look
don't
it
know.
up on
Yeah, we'd have
Spotify.
to look at that one up. Yeah, but I mean, they're even putting like Foo Fighters as under Supergroup, because you have Dave Grohl
No,
from
that's
Nirvana, Pat Smear from the Germs, Nate Mendel, Sunny Real Estate, Taylor Hawkins, Alanis Morissette.
yeah. But again, Taylor Hawkins was like
Yeah,
a hired drummer for Alanis Morissette.
right. You
Like
have to
he
be a
wasn't known.
creative. Yeah,
He wasn't known before Foo Fighters.
right.
I would say Pat Smear definitely, but then Pat Smear at that point was more known as the second guitar player from Nirvana by most people.
Right. Yeah.
I would say Foo Fighters is just Dave Grohl's.
You just call Dave Grohl with some well pedigreed other.
I mean,
people.
Sunny Day, of course.
Sure.
Of course.
But again,
Yeah.
against Nirvana or against, you know what I mean? Against like, oh yeah, just so
Yeah.
the guy from Sunny Real Estate's playing in a band with the guy from Nirvana.
Yeah, he's
sort of
like,
how that works.
that's like a super group for Northwest nerds. Oh my God. And it's the Germs and Sunny Day. And the majority of people would be like, what? I don't know.
Right. Or same thing with Zwan, right? This Billy Corrigan.
Oh, yeah, Billy
kind
Corgan.
of fake band.
Who else was in that band?
So you have Paz from Perfect Circle and
right.
Entrance and
Okay.
everything, and then Matt Sweeney from Chavez. And the Matt Sweeney shitness. And
Yeah.
then Dave Pajo was in it. And then Jimmy Chamberlain
from Slint.
Yeah, Dave Pajo from Slint. And it just sounds like I think it was just a Billy Corrigan solo band, but he didn't want to be a band. He was trying to hire a bunch of heavy session people. Okay.
I didn't know Paz was in Perfect Circle.
Yeah, she's in the Pixies now. She's like an epic session person. Yeah.
I saw Entrance Band play. I mean, I saw them a couple times, but I saw them play at the Eagle Rock Community Center.
Oh yeah.
And like her bass playing was insane.
Yeah.
I loved it. And I have photos of her playing, and she's in like high heels and she's like kicking the amp. She's like who is this? She's amazing. And then I just saw recently that she's in the Pixies now.
Yeah,
which is rad.
we played at ATP in England, these Altomar's Parties festivals. An Entrance Band played, and I think it was before they played, because she like climbed on top of like this tent structure and then couldn't get down. She got like stuck up there or something. I think they'd taken a bunch of acid or something, and and she'd climbed on top of this thing, and so they had to like get the fire department out there with like the giant cranes, and thing to like get her, like a cherry picker, some huge thing to like get her off the top of this thing, because there was no way for her to, like, if she started climbing, she would fall, or if she started to try to climb down herself, she would just fall. So it was they had to get her down, and then I think they kicked him out, but I don't know if they had played yet. But it was kind of gnarly.
That's insane.
Yeah.
She didn't like full Eddie Vedder it and just.
Oh no! I don't even think there was people around. I think she was like outside.
Oh, it wasn't like above the stage.
No, she like climbed outside of the venue, and I think they weren't even playing, or it's not that they were on stage, if I can remember correctly.
That Grim Reaper Blues song is great.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they're amazing. Then Off, another kind of
punk, that's a good one.
Sort of super group. Yeah. Keith Morris, Circle Jerk, Black Flag, Dimitri Coates, Burning Brides, and then Steve and Mario. But anyway, okay.
That's a very legitimate supergroup.
Proper supergroup.
I think
it's a well balanced sort of supergroup idea.
Like when you see the names of the people, you're like, oh my god, because like everybody knew Burning Brides because of Dimitri. Everybody knew Circle Jerks because of Keith.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Right. That's
everybody
like
knew, like they were like the main. Band. They were like the main person from the band.
Mm-hmm. It's a little bit like fantasy football, I suppose, too, right? I mean, I don't really play,
totally.
But if it's like if you could go through, like your record collection and pick the drummer from this record with the singer of that record, this, and kind of do that. I wonder if the AI eventually will that'll be the next Spotify playlist thing you can do, is just create your own band from your playlist. Like,
oh my god,
your supergroup would sound like this.
Yes. I bet that's been done. Well, did you hear that? I just saw a headline and I didn't read the whole thing, as of most people with the news these days. I think that one of the AI songs that was like became hugely popular on YouTube from, I think it was Drake and The Weeknd. Someone made an AI song that was
I don't know this,
as Drake and The Weeknd, and it became kind of a big popular song. And they submitted it for the Grammys.
Did
Which I don't know even what that process is. Like if anybody can just submit a song to the Grammys, I don't know. I don't know how that works. But I thought that that might have been one of the best
well, I
news
think,
headlines I've seen in a while.
yeah, I mean, I
It's
think,
just laughable.
like the the strike, the writer strike going on. Like, I wish there could be like a musician strike or something. What I mean, where it can be kind of like, oh yeah, you can't. Could we hold back? Because that's one of the things they're holding out for on the writers and actors side of things is restrictions or at least some kind of compensation around AI sort of likenesses and AI work as someone getting credit for it and not just taking all of recorded media and using it as like a bin to just steal from. Like, oh yeah, it's all been done, so now we're just gonna, it's all a bunch of trash, we're just gonna pull bits and pieces from different pieces of trash and then create new culture. But it also just seems like when people do it, at least somebody gets paid for that. When you just rip off, like, cool, I'm gonna take part of a Beatles song and part of this and part of that and I'm gonna call it an original creation. But once a computer does it, then it's like, oh, now we don't even have to pay anybody. It's just have computers make music for out of anything.
Yeah, totally. Well, and they said, I know that there was a lawsuit recently that said that AI artwork is not copyrightable. So that would actually help in some sense of that, like a brand couldn't even use some AI because then
because they would never own
couldn't,
it. Right.
They would never own it, so someone else could just come and use the same imagery.
Well, at least that seems fair play.
Brand.
Yeah, if you make stuff out of nothing, you can't say, oh, but now that's mine. And it's like, well, no, that belonged. You made it out of a group sort of community sort of pool of creative talent, and it belongs to the group pool. You can't don't be the only one taking money from that.
Yeah,
what a nightmare.
And I mean, I think my thoughts. My basic thoughts on that is like, if you were paying artists and musicians and actors enough money that they were living and comfortable, then none of this would even be an issue because no one would care.
Right.
Because it's like the only reason is that everybody's looking in the future and going like, well, I've put my whole life into this, being a creative person and doing this job. And then you're telling me that a computer company or a software company is going to come and take my $3 come take it at $3 a pop. But it's not like it's going to some executive somewhere. It's not like going to another artist, or like, everybody's fine with competition between artists. Everybody's not fine when like the suit at the top is getting all the money because he made a better computer program that can write something. It's like taking from the ether and building something, and they're like, oh yeah.
It's funny. I think I keep thinking of, we're at this point now where like, the children of the 90s who were looking, like, oh cool, I could always just work at a coffee shop or a cool record store or a bookstore, all these, the myriad of brick and mortar, cool, creative, weird hangouts and hideouts that existed through our fundamental culture. It's like seemed like there was always some type of job in that service industry of things, where you kind of trip an hour. You could be a radio DJ, or you could spin records on a cool format of something. And it's like all of those things I think have just been like dismantled. And so we're kind of having our own sort of whatever late Gen X, early millennial sort of like midlife crisis of like, like the 90s, when all the parents like, wait, I have to learn, Excel or spreadsheets now, all those movies, of like the dismantling of whatever happened from your youth or what employment prospects you thought you would have coming into your 40s. I think we're all kind of entering that sort of phase in our own life. Like there was a great tweet that Andreas Troff reposted, and it was like, I don't want to have to learn how to be a social media influencer marketing specialist. I was supposed to be I was supposed to be like the grouchy guy at the record store recommending cool cool experimental music, or I was supposed to be the
Right.
DJ who played too much new wave and got involved in some kind of mystery after hours. You know, it was like,
Right.
these would be great movies. I'd love to see both of those movies. But now
Yeah.
we're all here trying to pretend to know what TikTok is, and
All these things that are made for young people. Yeah,
yeah,
100%.
it's
Well, and I think that it really was like, it it was a thing that, like, okay, nobody wants to be the manager, but if you're the manager of a place, you're going to make enough money to have an apartment, be able to go out to dinner, have a little bit of a savings, whatever. Like, that was
Right.
like a job. It was like, that was the shitty job.
Yeah.
It was like, ugh, I'm going to have to manage people. But you could manage a store and you could make a little chunk of money. And then now it's like, you can't even do anything. Any of those jobs.
What
are
store
like,
are you going to manage?
Yeah, right.
It's warehouse fulfillment centers. You can manage the fleet of trucks that go out to deliver things.
Yeah,
Are you?
totally.
What do you know about
Yeah.
logistics, transportation? Coordination and refilling,
Right.
and managing a group of mechanics to keep these things on there, so you can have minimum wage people drive packages around all day long.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And it becomes, and these situations of like becoming more efficient, like everything is like more efficient, and like, well, more efficient for who?
Right.
It seems like not more efficient for the people who are working. You make it more efficient. That's what I never really understood too. It was like, most people don't want very much. They want to feel somewhat secure, and they want to know that they make enough money that their rent is not going to go super high, or their, whatever, like everything is not going to go through the roof and they're going to be screwed. But like, if you get everybody on this kind of like normal path, somewhere near the bottom to the middle, most people would just be like, you know what, I'm fine. Just don't bother me.
Right. Just enough.
Yeah.
Not looking for a lot. I was talking to my friend last night, and she manages like a media sort of mastering service, or for like the quality control and the basic film and television sort of processes. And and she was saying that it used to be that she got into it from music into this, looking for dependable work, a place where you could kind of make a career. And she was saying that it used to be really attractive to musicians because there'd be times we were really busy and times when things got slow. Like there were seasons and releases of media. There would be pilot season, or there'd be a new season of TV. So you'd ramp up, do all this work, get all the stuff, all the color correction done, all of the assets delivered and managed, all of the distribution houses and everything you would do. And then it would be slow. And then you'd go to the next one, and the next slowness, and then you could use that time wisely. If you were so inclined, you could have a second career. Again, kind of talking about like a hyphenate sort of lifestyle. Like there were certain industries, like some similar to like a teacher, right, where you would teach all year long, and then you'd have your summer break off. There were just some industries that would do that. But then then with streaming and all this other, the way things were going, then it just became 365 days a year. There was no seasons really. But then it occurred to me, I was like, oh, well, no, now the seasons are, those low times are just catastrophes. You have your economic, so your economic collapse. Then you have a pandemic, a biological pandemic that goes on, and then now there's a labor action strike. So within every 2 years, you'll have 6 to 8 months of downtime. That's where you can schedule your vacations around whatever global crisis is the next sort of time to then where the markets are going to shift and resettle, and you can reconsider changing careers or do something completely different. It just feels like there's a new instead of having a cyclical, like I think, speaking to what you're saying, we're like, we don't need a lot, you kind of have enough and you get through, and there's time for vacations and there's time for this, and you can do this, and you can kind of create a regularity with that. It's almost like you work here, they take breaks here, and we're like, but if you worked all week long, if you didn't have those 2 days off every week, you could get so much more done. You could make so much more money.
And guess what? Someone else is going to be taking that money from you if you're not there.
Right. So, but this idea that it's like, well, yeah, but then if I work all the time, I'm going to die early and be miserable and lose my fucking mind and have an ulcer.
Well, and I do think like the movie industry has been good and I think it was because I don't know the history of it, but early on there was a lot of mob control, and
Mm.
so they created the unions early on to make sure that the work stayed around. I feel like that's true, but I could be
I
completely
have
making
no
that up.
idea. Yeah.
But they've had unions
all
forever.
all mob historians, please address all comments and concerns to Mr. Aaron
Yes,
Farley
please.
at
And if I am not talking bad about the mob. I'm not saying anything negative
and
about any.
for all victims of mob violence, please address all questions and concerns
Yeah.
to Mr. Aaron Farley.
Yes, yes. These are things that I know nothing
Yeah,
about.
you're right. But you've
But
heard word on the street was
yes, I've heard.
yeah, yeah.
But that there's, I mean, that even working in the industry here and there as a photographer, that there's a lot of like, there's union jobs, there's non-union jobs, there's times you have to, you're not in the union, but you have to be in the union for a day, and you have to take union rates and all of these things. And it's very controlled, and it can be a lot of like kind of bullshit bureaucracy at times, and people have to say no to jobs, and it's tough for producers because there's all these, the rules are crazy, but the industry is, or was, I guess, um, stable for the most part. There's a stability. Like if you were a cameraman and you were in um, uh, the union, you knew you were gonna have work. You could work locally. You might work on the same TV show for 15 years. But you knew what your rates were. You knew how much you were going to get a raise every the length of time, and there's a stability there that creates a whole industry. And you don't get people trying to come in as much, like trying to, you don't kind of get the scammers and the hustlers trying to, that stuff all happens on the other side of things. But on the work side, like once the movie is being made, and it's very blue collar, like that's why so many times when I hear people like talk shit on Hollywood, like, oh, Hollywood elites, and you're like, oh my God, Hollywood is like construction. It's like a construction set. If you've ever been on set, it's literally like being on a construction set. It's
Yeah.
like everybody's blue collar, everybody's driving trucks, everybody's like, they got their wage, they know what they're making horrible jokes, they're eating bad food, and they're doing work. It's like very hard work.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the thing. Like people have tried to unionize photographers, and I'm like, it's never gonna happen, because it's like musicians. I know there's a musicians union for certain things, but like for the most part, it's like you're kind of on your own out there, and if you're not hustling, like, there's no work, because there's
Right.
always going to be, it's kind of a singular thing. But for these big industries, like just going through the seeing the kind of Hollywood unions and the commercial unions and stuff, it's like once people get in those unions, if you want to work, there's work, unless there's a strike, obviously, then it becomes rough.
That's the whole
But
idea.
hopefully those,
Yeah.
yeah, but hopefully that is working for you. I don't know how we got on that subject.
I don't know, but it's good. Well, no, I think you look at the life of a band, and here with our last week's episode, Watts Together, it's everybody kind of like, okay, here was the big shot to make an impact and kind of perform in these bands and tour the world and everything, and then what happens? I think it's that sort of unspoken of thing, where I don't know. I think it's interesting, definitely, talking to a lot of people, and even similar with my own life. It's like you can play in bands and do all this fun stuff, but then what is the next chapter? What I mean? If you didn't make enough to retire on at 28, then what does life look like? And I think it always used to be there was different places to go. You could kind of find a niche somewhere in the industry for using your experience. And I think it's, again, all rules are sort of out the window, and we're all making it up as we go along. Which is it's fine. It's fun. I mean, I didn't choose this road because it was going to be the soft, easier. We always knew there was an easier road somewhere out there. But I think as a creative person, there's just something about that kind of like, how do you make it? How do you make it make sense? I think if not being creative, it's really, there's just a quality of life sort of thing you experience. I think we've all had those day jobs. Like, okay, I can put up with this for so long, and going so hard at in your 20s. but then to have a taste of something like, oh, this makes sense, this is great, and it's like, I don't know if I have a minimum wage job left in me. If I could, hustle a few songs, do something, it's like I'm able to make as much,
Yeah.
Working one day a month as I would if I worked all month long with this weird sort of I don't know. I feel very grateful for all those experiences. But it's tricky.
Definitely.
It's tricky to know how it all makes sense.
And I agree. It's like you're making the choice, and like sometimes those choices just don't work out monetarily.
Yeah.
But that you're here for, you've got one life, and you're like, well, how do I want to live it? Do I want to take those chances because I feel like in my head that's how I need, like if I don't do something creative in a week, I find myself getting antsy and like super like feeling crazy, and I'm like, oh, I haven't done anything this week. Like I need to get this out of my system. And I think that there is that I think some people are just that's their output is that kind of creative energy to make something or do something new or take a plunge into some unknown territory and explore. And again, I do think that I've always thought that of musicians, that like the people who used to be the pirates, or the people who used to like, I'll go try to find water. Who needs water? We're running out of water. I'm going to get some people together. We're going to go try to find water. Hopefully we'll be back.
Yeah.
And I feel like whatever that personality is, that has been like human personality forever, to like spread across the world and find things and make friends and make connections and bring people back into the tribe or the group or the society, and shut other people out because they're horrible, whatever. Like, like that is like what the artists and musicians and creative people are now. Because it's this like community building, and it's this like these stories, like you interview them for 45 minutes and literally they all have so many stories of like, oh, then we connected with this person, and then we made this thing, and then we connected with these people, and we moved here, and it's like, that's such a human thing that I think sometimes I don't know, not necessarily as a society, I don't want to be that dramatic, but that people don't look at that necessarily as this thing that holds us together,
No,
like as a group, like these creative weirdos are these people that are like, no, come on guys, come to my show.
Yeah.
Like, how do you get like 50 people in the same like dirty old room with no toilets and whatever to listen to someone blow your eardrums out, and everyone goes, I love it. It's
Right.
like, it's not like it's not a normal thing, but somehow that's what so interesting.
Come to the campfire. Hey, everybody gather around this campfire. I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to sing a song. I'm going to express something.
Exactly.
And we're going to build this, sort of connections. Like, you're going to meet your wife here. You're going to meet your best friend here. And this is how we're going to do this thing. And we're going to bring people together and express something for you. Yeah. That's the role in the culture and yeah.
Well, and what do we, like, we don't have, like, what do we remember about the past is music, stories,
art, photography,
art,
film. Yeah.
And even paintings, like farther and farther, like what the only things that even last are things that people made and got lost or got buried or that we're digging up. And it's like we don't remember the accounting.
Right.
Although that's important. It's very important to do your accounting, and we don't remember like the all of the other, like the weird little things that people do that are just, well, I'm just here and I'm just, going to be safe and whatever. We remember the whoever was the weirdo that went out and did some crazy thing that actually worked,
pushed everything forward. Yeah. But that gets back to like that, like Office Space quote, like, well, like, what's your dream? And then just do that. It's like, well, but then nobody would ever pick up the trash. Nobody would ever, know what I mean? Then we would
exactly.
have, it's like, you can't just do it. Everybody can't just live their dream. You have to, have a certain amount of responsibility and, picking up after yourself and having, the people just working it through. But I think that, I don't know, but I do believe, is that place for everybody, and start just finding what makes sense for you. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
good, but
Well,
the
and having
together.
support.
Yeah.
Yeah, and having support of those creative people, because that's where all these stories happen, in these weird in between spaces, by a bunch of creative weirdos who think that they run the world.
Yep. But I think, it's definitely, I think things have just changed where it used to be, you'd make something, you'd sell it. Like, I made this
Yeah.
record, you could buy the record. Then I think there's,
Yeah.
just the idea. And I think it came through the music industry first, this idea like, oh, there's the devaluation of creative product. And then I think it came from then music, or it came from music did it first, and then the film and industry started doing it to itself through the streaming sort of thing. And everybody, it's like, yeah, but there's no money here, but we're all just made this big thing. It's like, yeah, but we can't, no one's going to pay for it. And it's like, well, that's bullshit, because no, people are paying for something. It's like, oh yeah, but that's not for what you guys are doing. That's for what they're paying for, the stream. And we make the stream in the offices. Well, what did we all do over here? Like, well, you make the stuff that's in the stream. Like, yeah, I know, we'll pay us for that. Like, no. But that's not what the people are paying for. The people aren't paying for the content. They're just paying for the stream. Like, but there's nothing, and there won't be anything in the stream. It's like, oh, okay.
Eventually.
It's the same sort of idea of like, oh no, we're just paying for Spotify. Well, what's on Spotify? Oh, all the music in the world. Cool. How do those people get paid? Oh yeah, they don't. We're not going to pay those people, but we're just going to give people they're going to pay for the keys to get onto the platform. Like, but if there's nothing on the platform, there's nothing for anybody to pay for anyone to pay for. Like,
and everything goes to the platform,
right?
Or you end up only getting paid because of advertising. I think that's the interesting. Like, now everything is kind of an advertising model.
Oh, speaking of which, we should welcome our new advertiser, DistroKid.
Oh yeah.
if you go to distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate, take 30% off when you sign up. Get your music online.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. All right. We should get going. Thank you so much. I'm glad you dug WA together. I feel like it's almost like a command or like a verb too, the way they use it. It's not just a name, a noun. I think everyone.
Yeah. Like, we will WA together.
Yes. Super cool. All right. Well, next week we'll have another good one, and we'll be back.